Hey, what's up, everybody? RJ Carter here, Senior Managing Editor and Chief Bottle Washer for CriticalBlast.com. We're just kind of doing a lunchtime chill stream here, just to talk about this and that. We do have things going on, big things going on with Critical Blast Publishing, the publishing arm of the company. And just sending out a link here to see if we can get some friends to join us. There we go. Right, so earlier today I saw the cover for Bulletproof, #1, Bulletproof Origins. That is our YA offering for young adults. It's aimed towards the high school market, and it is by Stephen Mitchell. Stephen J. Mitchell is the full author name that goes on the byline of that. And it's an interesting book. I had a lot of fun reading that one and going through the editorial process. He's a superhero, but he's a subpar hero. That's sort of the running joke that we have with him. In fact, you've probably even seen it mentioned on banners here and there. His name's Cody Haywood, and he suddenly wakes up one day, finds out that he is literally bulletproof. He is impervious to damage. He's not super strong. He's not flying. Basically, all he's got is a really, really smart best friend and a really, really savvy not girlfriend that he recognizes as such yet. But I think this is something that readers are going to have a lot of fun with. We've seen the preliminary cover, the dust jacket. This is coming out as a hardcover. So we're going to have a lot of, we're very excited about that. I mean, hardcover books, that's something that we've not done before. So we're trying to make sure we have all our I's dotted and T's crossed to make a great first impression with all the readers out there. Dates? Well, yeah, we have a date scheduled for that. Then we have the October the 31st. How's that for a date? Halloween, perfect time to dress up as a superhero. And of course, that's what Cody does eventually do when he needs to go out and test his powers and try to use them. Because why wouldn't you be a superhero if you had superpowers? Arch City Adam. What can I do? I can't take it down. The arch is out there. Get you to come join us here. See if we can get Adam on the line here. Oh. All right, copied the link. We'll see if Adam can come in and play. Also coming up in the next 2 weeks here is the Archon Science Fiction Convention in Collinsville, Illinois. I will be there. Right now I have half a table because while I'm an invited guest to run panels and discussions, I'm also an idiot and didn't realize I needed to reserve a table. So I don't have a table to sit down with my books. I'm waiting to see if somebody drops out at the last minute. That frequently happens, and if they are, then I'm going to scavenge their table away. I do have the option on a half of a table right now. A very nice person has offered to share with me for half the rent. Adam's going back to work. Well, watching live streams during lunch, that's fun. Hey, Scott, hola, welcome. We were just talking about Archon, the Collinsville, Illinois Science Fiction Convention. I'm going to be there setting up with the debut of the brand new Destroyer novel. For those who don't know, Warren Murphy's The Destroyer, Remo Williams. That is my thing now. I mean, they still own it. I'm the writer on the series. I've written the last 2 novels, Bully Pulpit and Continental Divide. Well, it's bad when you got to think about your own titles. Next one coming up is Monumental Terror. And this is going to find Remo battling 2 different protest groups. One that wants to tear down Confederate monuments and the other that wants to preserve them. But there's a secret going on behind both of these, and when Remo uncovers it, turns out that there's a really big bad guy with a plan for assassination. Yeah, Remo's cool. He's still going on, man. In fact, there's talk. Well, there's more than talk. There are plans for a new movie. Shane Black, the guy behind Iron Man 3, he's attached to direct it. James Mulaney's already turned in a screenplay. So it's rolling, but as these Hollywood projects go, it's rolling slowly, very slowly. Also, while I'm at Archon and not selling books, I'll be at panels, and one of them I'm going to definitely live stream from. I'll have to have somebody hold my phone and try to do it from there, because they're having a panel on diversity and comics. So I will be part of the panel members on that one. I'll be one of 3, and you can probably guess what tact I'll be taking. Fortunately, the convention goers there are all reasonable and nice people, so I'll be able to have discussions without having fights and arguments. But it's basically, the topic is, why is there such an outcry against diversity in comics? Why is Rhodey okay as Iron Man, but Riri Williams is a step too far? Which, of course, is not the argument in diversity in comics at all. But we will see what will pan out of there. It should be an interesting hour. We'll definitely have up links for those, that live stream, to give you plenty of time to log in. What else is going on? Let's see. We just received the DVD last night for Doom Patrol Season 1. I have not watched any Doom Patrol. I do not subscribe to streaming services. We have cable, and I don't even really watch that. I almost watch everything I watch comes through either digital or DVD, because then I can really control the time that I get to sit down and watch it. The only thing I do watch that I have no control over and I want to report on as quickly as possible is every brand new episode of Mountain Monsters on the Travel Channel. Because we just have a lot of readers who really enjoy it, and of course, if our readers enjoy it, we want to give it to you. Yeah, and have a critical blast of root beer there. Put that bulletproof banner back up here. Still using the StreamYards thing. It doesn't have all the bells and whistles, and I see a lot of people are using it. So I've decided to probably make it our default. Has anybody actually bought it? Is it worth the money to advance it? To get, I guess you could get to use your own logo, take that duck off of there. I don't really mind the duck. All it does is, you know, by being there, advertise that, hey, this person's cheap, he's using the free thing. But yeah, that's because I am cheap and I'm using the free thing. But it'd be fun, I guess, to put the Critical Blast logo up there instead, and be able to maybe change some backgrounds and things. I just don't know if it justifies the cost. I know a lot of people, Ethan Van Sciver, a lot of other live streamers are using the StreamYard thing. And I will say it's extremely easy to use. It's super easy. So if anybody's, you know, got experience with that, I do have OBS, and I also have the other streaming OBS. There's 2 of them. I can't recall what their names are. Streamlabs. I've got OBS Studio and Streamlabs OBS. So they both seem to interact with each other. I like the OBS Studio because I'm at least able to get slideshows popping up on that. That one works pretty well. The only reason I don't use OBS Studio is because you've still got to go into YouTube and set up your live stream ahead of time and then connect to it. At least that's what I've had to do. With StreamYard, you just kind of say, it's a new broadcast, make it and go, and it creates it on the fly. I don't have to go into YouTube to do anything. Why does my phone always tell me nothing? It buzzes like I've got something important, and then it's nothing but like Burger King saying, hey, come get a hamburger. Got to make sure I turn off all those notifications. So, what else do we have coming up here? We've already talked about Doom Patrol. I started watching the DVD this morning on my drive-in. No, I didn't have a DVD player in my car. I took the digital download and I watched on my phone, like a sane person would do. Nobody has a DVD player in their car. Come on. Besides this Blu-ray, I am at least that modern. I get with the times that much. So far, it's interesting. It's also not the same Doom Patrol that we saw in Teen Titans, the other DC Universe streaming show, which shows that DC is at least consistent in being inconsistent when it comes to editorial policy and unified shared universes. Because you would think otherwise they would have tried to get the same actors for Doom Patrol as portrayed the group in the Teen Titans episodes where they appeared. Not Teen, it's just Titans, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. But what do I know? They're obviously they're not going to cross over because the crossovers already happened and they weren't the same people. So that kind of sucks. CW shows are coming out soon. That's usually we've received all the DVDs for last season of everything. We've reviewed Arrow, Flash, Supergirl, and we will have the review up soon for the CW superhero sitcom Legends of Tomorrow, which that's probably the one that has the least amount of superhero action in it, and yet it's at least their second best show of all four. Supergirl obviously being at the very bottom tier because it doesn't really care about superhero stories as much as it cares about social and political agendas and preaching them at you. By the way, did anybody catch that at the end of Supergirl season 4 when Leviathan is revealed? Because Eve Teschmacher, and for those who haven't watched it, I don't care if I'm spoiling it for you because you're not going to make it that far anyway without turning it off. I know a lot of people quit mid-season, so you need to know this. She's talking with somebody who's a member of Leviathan, and Lex Luthor has obviously been defeated. Spoiler alert, he's not defeated, nor is he dead because he's going to be resurrected by the Monitor because that was a last-minute hint that the Crisis on Infinite Earths thing is coming this season. But anyway, Leviathan, the agent, said Lex was supposed to move the needle. Now, as soon as I heard that, I was instantly on alert because I'm thinking hashtag move the needle was the big Comicsgate hashtag. What do you call those things other than hashtags? It's just like a motto or something. But that was being used for months and months by the people in Comicsgate in its early days. And I can't help but think that whoever was in the writer's room was trying to get a dig in on that by using the phrase move the needle. I don't know, maybe they weren't. Maybe it really was a coincidence, but given the stance of Supergirl series writers on everything else, I would have to think somebody in there was aware of Comicsgate and was just wanted to throw that in there, especially attributing it to Lex Luthor, because he's the evil bad guy. But the new series do start up, so I've already got a lot of questions. Is this going to be the last year for the Flash, since everything points to him disappearing in the Crisis for years and years and years and years and years? How are they going to run a half season of Arrow when the title character is no longer part of the series? That's going to be hard to do. It's kind of like when Valerie Harper was written out of her own series, and they had to call it Valerie's Family. It's like, why? Why even make reference to her if she's gone? Legends Tomorrow, I don't even think that's going to be part of the Crisis crossover. They weren't part of the Elseworlds crossover. Probably because it's so far removed now from what's going on in the rest of the Arrowverse that there's just no point in even trying to shoehorn it all in. But that crossover episode does come up in December. That's only 3 months out. All the shows start up again in October, so we'll be checking that out. And of course, we'll be getting in on that new Batwoman series to see how that is. We'll have a live stream actually coming up here in a couple of weeks. Set it up on a weekend. Steve Mitchell and I will be sitting down talking about recapping all the last season of CW, the different shows, and prognosticating where we think they're going to go from here, as far as what's going to happen with Crisis and post-Crisis. Because, the characters that are leading the CW shows are Supergirl and The Flash, and the two big things that came out of the original Crisis on Infinite Earths is that both of those characters died. Obviously, that's probably not going to happen in this Crisis on Infinite Earths. We can't just throw in new characters with the same name. Oh, wait. They do that all the time, don't they? Throw in new characters with the same name. Okay, well, never mind. We have no idea what's going to happen. We may have a brand new Supergirl. We may have a brand new Flash. We'll just have to watch and see. Right, so about this time, Stephen Mitchell should be getting my messages about the cover art changes. Nothing like getting last-minute notifications. But we expect to have that dust jacket done probably by this weekend. And then it's just a matter of getting it off to the publisher and saying, okay, here's the last bit of changes to it. So we will be well ahead of the game. And I don't know, do we want to take this to IGG? I mean, we don't need to fund it. It's going to be printed. But maybe if we wanted to put some stretch goals in there. Hey, Lola! Hello, Lola. La, 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 Lola. I'm sorry, it's always in my head every time I see your posts. So now it's out of my mouth, and don't I look stupid? Yeah, what's going on out there? I'm just sitting here talking to a screen. It's cathartic. We've been talking about CW shows. We've been talking about the new book, Bulletproof. We've been talking about the new Destroyer novel I have coming out in the next week. So we've talked about everything except comic books, which used to be the thing we talked about. We came in and talked about all the stupid stuff going on in comics and all the cool stuff going on in comics, and now all the stupid stuff has remained stupid stuff, and all the cool stuff has become stupid stuff. It's nothing but, it's comics wars now. Comics books, secret wars, or civil war. I don't know, they're always a war. Can we have a Comicsgate civil war? Let me think about that. That might be interesting to make a documentary out of. Wonder what Ken Burns would do with something like that. Just go out and take everybody's YouTube live streams and compile them and start turning it into a full-length movie. That would be cool. I'd watch that. I don't think anybody would look very good in it. What is our project? Our project for Critical Blast right now is Bulletproof. Bulletproof is a hardcover young adult novel about a young man in high school with attention deficit disorder who wakes up one day to find out he is literally bulletproof. He is indestructible. He's not super strong. He can't fly. He's not a super genius, but he's got a good heart. He's just got focus problems. And this is 212 pages. It is prose. It is a hardcover. We've just got the dust jacket cover art finalized. So I'm sure Steve is going to be putting that up. If you want to see what Steve's doing with Bulletproof, be sure to follow at CB Nerd. So that's like comic book nerd. He is the author. The South is rising. Well, that is happening in the Destroyer novel coming out this week, where the factions are fighting over tearing down Confederate monuments or protecting history. So if you're not into YA, but you want some action, you can go out and get my book, which is coming from Destroyer Books next week. Destroyer number 153, Monumental Terror. I mean, switch banners. You've had enough show there, Steve. My turn. Bulletproof is awesome. I had I was the editor on that one, so I got to go through and make sure everything was all cleaned up. It is very cool. Well, there's nothing to link yet. That's the thing. It's not out on Amazon. And I was just tossing out the idea there as to whether or not we should do some sort of an IGG for stretch goals. I will say that there is a link I can send out, but I can't send it out yet because Steve has not approved everything on it yet. But there is a store. Let me see if I can't come up with the logo design here. This is entertainment. Very slow computer. And I'm going to try to open up the image for the Bulletproof logo. Maybe you've seen it. Maybe you haven't. But why not share it on the screen here? Now I've got a t-shirt that I had made up. It's one of a kind, but I am not going to put that on the Critical Blast store, although we do appreciate you all going to the Critical Blast store from our link and checking out our arrangement of t-shirts there. And here we will have, let's see, I've got to go to my settings. I'm figuring all this out. Share screen, that's the one we want. Application window, and share that. What we got going on here? Come on, Bulletproof. Yes, add you to the stream. That's what we want. There it is. That's a sharp little logo. We got some stickers out with that. We're going to be distributing them at Archon in Collinsville. Again, where I will be live streaming my panel appearance on the Diversity and Comics panel, which I anticipate is going to be actually a lot of fun. I know the two other guys who are on the panel with me, and I know the tack they will take, but we get along, and we can discuss things like rational human beings. It's the audience that I'm expecting the best comments from. So we will have fun. We will not fight. I think that's very, very important, actually, to these discussions, is that we don't lose our tempers and that we articulate our feelings clearly and in a fashion that is promoting logic. Because you can argue with logic, but when you're with feelings, you argue with logic, you fight with feelings. And fighting is all that we're getting today, it seems, from all the once revered corners of Comicsgate. I'm having to just sit back and watch everyone objectively and determine who I really think is. I'm not saying who I really think is still Comicsgate, because to me, I think they're all Comicsgate. I think that Ethan is Comicsgate. I think that Edwin is Comicsgate. I think that Tug is Comicsgate, and I think that Mike Miller is Comicsgate. Obviously, Zach is Comicsgate. But I think saying who's Comicsgate is like saying who's a Christian? Are the Catholics Christian? Well, ask one, and I'm sure they will say yes. Are the Pentecostals Christian? If you ask one, I'm sure they will say yes. Now, ask a Pentecostal if a Catholic is a Christian or vice versa, or ask a Baptist if either one of those are Christians, you may get a different answer. So it's up to the individual to determine whether or not they're Comicsgate. And no one can say yay or nay to the contrary. So that includes, John Delarose and Vox Day. If they want to say they are Comicsgate, well, guess what? They're Comicsgate. And they're as much Comicsgate as Ethan Van Sciver or Mike S. Miller. So, Doug, is Doug Comicsgate? Well, does Doug say he's Comicsgate? Because I have not watched a Doug stream in a very, very long time. In fact, I don't get to watch a lot of the streams anyway. My streams are all watched on the phone when I'm driving, which means pretty much 5 o'clock drive time, I turn the radio off and I turn on that umbrella guy. So he's my drive time. But if Doug says he's Comicsgate, then he's Comicsgate. And I don't know. I guess you could go back to the whole "by their fruits you shall know them" kind of quote. So that if, like if someone says they're a Christian and they're going around killing cats and shoving them down dead babies' mouths or something, well, that's a decidedly unchristian act. You can't say you're a Christian if you're doing that kind of thing. So I guess sometimes you can say you're Comicsgate and be wrong. The Westboro Baptist Church says they're Baptists, and there's not a single Baptist church out there that would want them in their congregation. So I guess at the very worst, all the other Comicsgate people could say is that this person claims to be Comicsgate, but they don't exhibit the traits that we recognize as Comicsgate. It's the Church of Comicsgate. It's the great schism. We've gone through the High Council of Nicaea and established Comicsgate, and then Martin Luther has had his epiphany on Comicsgate and nailed it to the door of YouTube. And from that point on, we've had the Reformation of Comicsgate. We've had all kinds of conventions of Comicsgate, and now we just have little Comicsgate churches here and there, all of them producing comics. We've got the War Campaign, the Jack Chick of Comicsgate, where they make little meme pamphlets of all the other Comicsgate churches and tells why they're wrong and does it in a way that makes fun of them. Not sure Roe would like being compared to Jack Chick, which means I'm probably going to get memed. But yeah, if Doug says he's Comicsgate, then Doug is Comicsgate. He's his own version of Comicsgate. Doesn't mean that there is the one way of Comicsgate. I've posted before that the whole conversation is dost thou love the Christ? Aye, verily we love the Christ. Then thou art Christians and our brothers. And half hour later it's, hey, thou art loving the Christ wrong. Thou shalt go to hell for this. Screw thee. Now, the question I guess I should ask myself is, am I Comicsgate? Because we don't produce a comic. Can I be Comicsgate if I'm not making a comic? Because everyone I've seen who says they're Comicsgate is making a comic. But that's the supply side, and the argument I always hear is that Comicsgate is a consumer movement. So if we say that Comicsgate is a consumer movement, but all the visible evidence is that Comicsgate is a supplier movement, are they two sides of the same Comicsgate coin? Or is Comicsgate's supplier movement growing up in recognition of the consumer movement and taking over the name of it so that they can say, Yes, you are Comicsgate, and we are your suppliers because we are Comicsgate. I don't know. I just buy what I like. I am looking forward to getting my new graphic. I'm looking forward to getting my Cyber Frog. I came in finally on the third phase of that one, and we will review that, and we will review it objectively, just as we reviewed Lost Souls. I'm also looking to get the latest one from Blake Northcutt. That's going to be fun. I'm going to really excited about reviewing that one. Well, now see, okay, it's a consumer movement. I mean, that's worth putting up there. Comicsgate, that is very worth putting up there. Looks much better in a bigger circle than a tiny circle. Comicsgate is a consumer movement that has a strong amount of talent because the corporate side of comics has turned them all away. Now, the corporate side of comics didn't turn away the customers or the consumers. They turned them off with what they're doing, but they didn't turn them away. They turned away the suppliers, who were the people like the Mike S. Millers, the Ethan Van Skyvers, people who supplied comics. But I suppose they could, it's two halves of the same thing, and they just kind of exist symbiotically. I don't know that you could have Comicsgate as a consumer movement if there was not a supplier that met that movement. Because you have to have a supplier outside of corporate comics if that's what you're rebelling against. Otherwise, you're just rebelling against comics in general, and you have nothing to buy. Granted, though, there are a ton of independent comics out there. I have heard too often from well-respected names in Comicsgate. I'm not going to say leaders because it's a leaderless kind of movement, but influential names. Ethan Van Skyver has said, the comic book industry is dying. That Umbrella guy shows, numbers and empirical evidence that comic book companies are on the decline. Those companies are on the decline. The industry is in what I see to be a new renaissance. And I go back to I was buying comics way back in the 80s. I have done that. I don't disagree with that. They've definitely turned away from their customers in that respect. But see, in the 80s, you had Marvel and DC, and did we have Dark Horse in the 80s? We had a couple of bigger names in the 80s who were the second and third tier. But all of a sudden, and without any need for a consumer movement, we had people in the late 80s who found out that they could get a mimeograph machine and draw and write in their garage and crank out pamphlets. And suddenly you have, Eastman and Laird cranking out Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in black and white on crappy paper and making a splash in the industry because there was this hunger for, new material. People were buying comics and excited to buy comics. Now, this led to several other companies doing this, and this was not in what would be considered a decline in the comic book industry. This was coming, on the heels of Watchmen and Dark Knight Returns and Batman Year One, the John Byrne Superman series. Things were set. I used to go to the comic store with a college fund income, part-time job, and try to determine the maximum number of comics I could buy to eat up all that money and get the most from my money. Now I go in with a 30-year career professional income, and I struggle to find something worth reading. So that's the flip that we've got now. I would go in and say, give me all of these things. What else can I read? I'll give this a chance. I'll give that a chance. And now it's like, I'm looking at the top tier stuff. I'm looking at Batman. I'm looking at Superman. Looking at Marvel titles, and nothing there speaks to me anymore and says, yes, you want to know what's happening this month with this character. And I could give a shit. It's boring. I can't. If I had $20 to buy DC Comics away from AT&T, I would restart the whole thing from the ground up. That's just take it back to basics again. Tell superhero stories. If you're going to reboot a company, reboot it. Don't rebirth it, especially if you're going to keep all the old baggage from the previous incarnations. Let's start with Superman's first day on the job. Let's start with Batman's first night on the job. And let's keep it consistent in that time stream for a while. Let's not see Robin show up for 5 years. And, I'm sorry, he's going to be Dick Grayson, which means you're going to lose things. You're going to lose Jason Todd. You're going to lose Damian Wayne. Okay, I heard the groans on Jason Todd. Nobody really cared about Damian Wayne. But just scorched earth, start over. Even if you got to do it with a new imprint, just say, the new DC or untarnished silver. It's a reference to the Silver Age when things were fun to read. I don't know. There's so much baggage, and everyone tries to hang on to it. And now it's like even the superheroes are tired of all the baggage. I don't want to read about a superhero sitting on the beach and moaning about his love life. I want, someone to try to rob banks and take over the world and leave clues to be solved over. Remember when Batman was the world's greatest detective instead of the world's greatest moper? Yes. And being misgendered by their doctor. Exactly. Get back to telling the stories. Remember when you got a whole story in one issue? Remember if it was 2 issues, that was like, I've got to make sure I get that second issue. And now it's like, I could leave any single mainstream title for 8 months, go back, pick up that book that's current, and be caught up on everything that happened in the last 8 months and not care. Not need to go back and reread a bunch of stuff. But I was saying that despite these declines, I still see this as a renaissance in comics. Just the way that Eastman and Laird found a niche for independent comics with something like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and spawned it off. I think that what happened with Comicsgate and what happened with IGG and Kickstarter and all these ways where now you can raise funds to get a book going, whereas before you had word of mouth. I mean, Eastman and Laird had nothing other than, the phone and maybe if they were lucky, somebody at CBG would take notice of them and they could get in the catalog through Friendly Franks or distribution. There is such a ripe opportunity for a real rebirth in comic books. And it's not going to be DC. It's not going to be Marvel. Somebody is going to do something great in comics. And the trick with it is that it's not that we're not producing quality comic books through these IGGs and these Kickstarters and these other crowdfunding things. What it is that we're not producing consistently enough on a schedule. Comic book floppies are a monthly kind of thing. What we get with IGG is pretty much graphic novels. We can't get the monthly reappearance of something. And I don't want a graphic novel every 6 months because, that's what we get now. We're getting a graphic novel over the course of 6 months, 1 chapter at a time, and then the whole novel comes out and you buy it again. And the people who wait don't buy the floppies. Well, guess what? That hurts the floppies. The floppies don't come out, then you don't get the graphic novel anyway. I would like to see, the monthly adventures of Cyberfrog. Let's do something like that. Is it possible? Probably not. It took a year and several months to do 40 pages. I would like to see bi-monthly anthology horror stories of, the Tug and Little Umbrella Girl, just hosting horror stories like Tales of the Unexpected or Ghosts or any of those things that used to come from DC Comics back in the day when I would read a 25-cent issue of House of Mystery, and I'd be exhausted at the end of that thing because there were so many stories packed into it, into 22 pages. And now it's like 22 pages later, I haven't even gotten off the dinner table where they were sitting at the beginning of the book. Too much talking, not enough. Little less conversation, a lot more action, as Elvis would say. It's what comics need. So if somebody can come up with the way to get the comics done well, tell interesting stories like they are, and do it quickly. And I'll tell you right now who's sitting back there shaking his head and nodding, saying, "It's me, it's me, it's me." You look at John Delarose. Look at Tim Lim. They're producing on a regular schedule multiple books, and they're Comicsgate. They're in another section of the Comicsgate spectrum, but they are Comicsgate, and they found a way to produce at a consistent and persistent rate. That was one of the questions when I met with Tim Lim in Arkansas. I sat down and talked with him on camera, and I said, "How can you make this a viable marketing plan when you're got to get in the books for $25 a pop? That's still more than what we're paying for books today, as expensive as they are." So we need to get, well, a larger audience would help with that. If we had a large audience, then you could start microfunding, where you could get into something for $5 a pop and still reach the goal. Still shipping charges got to be worked out. I don't know. There's a lot of comic book business that weighs things down when you have to crowdfund something. So it's not just as fun as saying, "Hey, here's a book. I've paid the artist." It's almost like if you could get a print on demand, much like the way you have with like Ingram Spark or KDP, where you have books out and the book doesn't even get printed until somebody buys it. If you could do print on demand comics and they just took care of the fulfillment, if Amazon just got into the business of saying, "Yes, we can print a comic book on demand from files, and every time somebody buys that comic, we'll just fire up the press and out it goes and we ship it," that would be a huge, huge boost to people who want to do IGGs, because you take away the entire cost of printing. You take away the entire cost of fulfillment. Somebody else has taken that over for you. Now you'll make less on a per book basis because, well, you've taken it away from your upfront calculations. Amazon's going to take it out on the back end, but you probably wouldn't have to sell them for $25 a pop because you just wouldn't. And plus, you'd be able to keep them in distribution, keep them in the market, rather than saying, "Okay, we're printing, to 263 backers, and that's going to be the limit. We're printing 263 copies. We're done." Well, I think I've reached the Forrest Gump level where that's all I can say about that. I think I've hit every kind of shrimp you can make out of Comicsgate books. Anyhow, if you do like or have some sort of schadenfreude of watching this kind of content, please subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. You definitely want to be subscribed before we do the live stream at Archon when we do the Diversity in Comics panel. And I will remind you that every first Sunday at 2 o'clock Central Time, we sit down with Dave Dyer at Cosmic Comics in Belleville. We talk about the state of the industry and things that have gone on that month and what new comics are coming out. This October, which is our next one, we will not be doing it on the first Sunday because that is the Archon convention. We'll be doing it on the second Sunday, and we will be bringing in Michael Tierney, who owns 2 comic stores in Little Rock, Arkansas. He's an Overstreet contributor, so he's always got his finger on the pulse of what's going on in the comics industry. So we've had him on before, and he's always gotten positive response. People tend to like his character, and they're also interested in what he has to say because he's on top of things. We're going to have that. Again, one final reminder, Bulletproof Origins will be available October 31st. We will be linking that all over the place on Halloween. And the Destroyer number 153, Monumental Terror, will also be available within the next week. It better be available within the next week. I'm getting copies to take to Archon, so it will be debuting there. We do appreciate you, all this. Dark Admiral March Hare, thank you for listening. I'm sorry that I've been droning on all this time. We're still getting the hang of doing these live streams, and especially a chill stream when we sit down with not a whole lot of conceptual meat to grind out from the beginning. We're just kind of making it up as we go along. Appreciate you being here, man. Please, share the video with other people. We're still trying to grow our subscriber base. We've been at this for 5 years, and we're at almost 600 subscribers because I focus so much more on the website and the publishing arm than I have on the social media. So we've got to round things out, and we're going to start doing more videos, more produced videos, as well as more live streams. And we have a podcast. So if you look for, if you like listening to podcasts, we have a lot of our videos, a lot of our interviews translated to audio because a lot of them were phone interviews. If you go to Anchor FM, you'll find us there, but we're also through Apple and iTunes and Spotify. The Critical Blast podcast, you'll find things in there like our interview with Jim Ballant. You'll find a phone interview we did with Lou Scheimer of Filmation from several years ago, talking about all the different cartoons that he produced for Saturday morning. A lot of stuff out there. I'm still transcribing a lot of our audio tapes to digital so we can put them out on the podcast. Would love to get Thurl Ravenscroft's interview out there. He's the guy who did Tony the Tiger. I've also got a tape with Dan DiCarlo where we were talking about his creation of Josie and some of the things he did. So yeah, if I can get a lot of those out there, I think they'd make some fun podcasts, especially if you're going to be listening while driving and you don't have to look at anything. Might as well be just audio. Anyway, thank you everybody for coming by. It's been a pleasure speaking with all of you. We'll have to do this again maybe next week. We'll just have another Lunchtime Chill stream. Take care.